We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph and Meseches Megillah. This is Megillah Daf 13a. The Gemara here continues, "De lo katle David l'Shimi." Knesset Yisrael, according to Rava, actually complains that David HaMelech didn't kill Shimi ben Gera. As Rashi over here says, Shahaya Chayiv Misa, that he was really Chayiv Misa. Why were they complaining? This Yalid Minei Mordechai, because then Mordechai ended up being born from from Shimi ben Gera to Mikni Bei Haman. And so then Haman got angry, got upset at Mordechai, and that's how the entire story occurred. So in a sense, Knesset Yisrael is upset at the tribe of Yehuda for the birth of Mordechai. And similarly, Rava says, Umashilim liyamini. And what happened? What was the payback that I got from Binyamin? Delo katle Shaul Agag, meaning that Shaul, who's from Binyamin, he didn't kill Agag. This Yalid Mine Haman, that caused Haman to be born, the Mitzar Yisrael, and he gave great pain to Klal Yisrael. So in this interpretation, Knesset Yisrael is actually complaining to the Shevet Yehuda and the Shevet Binyamin. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yochanan says, Liola mi Binyamin ka'asi. Really, when it comes to Mordechai, he descended from the tribe of Binyamin. V'amai kari le Yehudi. Why is he called Ish Yehudi? Why is he called a Yehudi? Al shum shekafar ba'avodah zarah, because he denied avodah zarah. Shekal hakofer ba'avodah zarah, that anyone who denies the avodah zarah, nikra Yehudi, is called a Yehudi. The Gemara says, K'dichsiv, like the pasuk says in Sefer Daniel, Isai govern Yehudayin v'gomer. There are certain Jews. Pasuk goes on to talk about the Jews who do not worship avodah zarah. The Gemara continues, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, ki have a pasuk b'divrei hayamim. When Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi would introduce Divrei Hayamim, Amar Hachi, he would say as follows, Kol Dvarecha Echadhim, all of your words, speaking to Divrei Hayamim, so to speak, all of your words are one. V'yanu Yodin l'darshan, and we know how to darshan the words of your psukim. The pasuk in Divrei Hayamim says, V'ishto ha-Yehudiya, Yolda es Yered avi Gedor, v'es Chever avi Socho, v'es Yikusiel avi Zanoach, v'eila b'nei Bitya bas Paro, asher lokach mered. In other words, the pasuk is talking about the Ishto ha-Yehudiya, seems to be the Jewish woman, and she gave birth to the following individuals. And then it says these are the children of Bitya bas Paro, the daughter of Paro, who clearly wasn't Jewish. So why is she called a Yehudiya? Amai kari lo Yehudiya. Why is she called Yehudiya? Al shum shekafra ba'avodah zarah, because she denied avodah zarah. Techsiv, like the pasuk says, Vatered bas Paro lirchotz ala yor. It says the bas Paro, the daughter of Paro, went to bathe by the river. V'yomer Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan said, Sheyarda lirchotz migilule beis avia, that she went to bathe because she was trying to cleanse herself from the idols of her father. So the Gemara now says, Yalda, she gave birth. Now the Gemara is going to interpret in a moment that these are not actually different individuals. It actually are all references to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Gemara is asking, did she give birth to Moshe Rabbeinu? V'haravuye Ravi says she only raised Moshe Rabbeinu. And so the Gemara says, Lomar Lach, this comes to tell you, Shakal HaMegadel Yasam V'Yasoma B'Zoch Beso, anybody who raises an orphan, a boy orphan or a girl orphan inside his house, Mala Olav HaKosav Kilu Yilada. The pasuk considers it as if you gave birth to that child. And the Gemara now darshans all the psukim, explaining how they're a reference to Moshe Rabbeinu. Yered za Moshe, Yered refers to Moshe. V'lama nikra shmo Yered, why is he called Yered? She Yorad lohem liyisrael mon biyamav, because the mon came down for Klal Yisrael during his days. And Gedor shegader pirtzosein shal Yisrael. What does it mean, Gedor? He fenced in the breaches among Klal Yisrael. The breaches referring to the breaches in terms of sinning. He fenced those in, he guarded, he protected against them. And what does it mean? Chever shechiver es Yisrael la'avian shabashamayim. He attached Klal Yisrael to their father in heaven. And Socho, what does Socho mean? Shenasa lahem liyisrael kesukah. That he became for Klal Yisrael, it became for them like a sukkah. And Yikusiel, what does it mean, Yikusiel? Shekavu Yisrael lakel biyamav. The Klal Yisrael hoped towards God during his time. And Zanoach, what does it mean, Zanoach? Shehizniach avonosein shal Yisrael, that he cleansed the sins of Klal Yisrael. And we'll note over here that the word shehizniach means to say like disregarded. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu disregarded the sins of Klal Yisrael. Also, when it says here, Shenasa Lahem Yisrael Kesukah, that's a reference to the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was like a sukkah, like a protector for Klal Yisrael. And the Gemara continues to darshan the above pasuk in Divrei Hayamim. The pasuk said Avi, Avi, Avi. The pasuk said the word Avi 3 times. What is that a reference to? It's a reference to the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was Av b'Torah, Av b'Chochma, Av b'Nevias. He was a father in Torah, a father in wisdom, and he was a father in prophecy. And the pasuk above also said, Ve'ela b'nei Bitya asher lokach Mored. It says these are the children of Bitya, and she married Mored. V'chi married Shema, was married his name, V'alo Kalev Shema, wasn't his name Kalev. And so the answer is, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying, Yavo Kalev shemored ba'atzas meraglim. Kalev, who rebelled against the evil advice, the evil counsel of the meraglim, he should come, V'yisas bas Paro, he should come and he should marry the daughter of Paro, Shemorda b'gilulei beis avia, that she rebelled against the idols of the house of her father. And the Gemara continues, returning to the Psukim in the Megillah Esther, Asher Heglam Yerushalayim. It says that Mordechai was exiled from Yerushalayim. Amar Rava says, Shegola me'atzmo, he exiled himself. As Rashi over here says, Shegola me'atzmo midaloksiv asher haya min hagola asher hagla. So it doesn't say he was part of the exile. Uksiv asher hegla im hagola. It says he was exiled with those who were exiled. Mashma shelohaya kashar Yisrael shegolo al karchan. That indicates that he wasn't like the other members of Klal Yisrael who were forced into exile. V'hu gola me'atzmo, rather he exiled himself. Kemosha asa Yirmiyah. That's the same thing that Yirmiyah did. Shegola me'atzmo at she'amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu lachzor. Yirmiyahu exiled himself until HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to return. The Gemara continues darshaning the psukim from the Megillah. Vayhi omein es Hadassah. It says that he raised Hadassah. Kari lo Hadassah v'kari lo Esther. She's called Hadassah and she's called Esther. So what's going on? So the Gemara says, Tanya, we learned in a Brayso, Rabbi Meir says, Esther Shema, her real name was Esther. V'lama nikra Shema Hadassah. Why is she called Hadassah? Al Shem HaTzadikim. It's because of the Tzadikim, Shenikru Hadassim. In general, the Tzadikim are called Hadassim. V'cheinu Omer, that's what the Pasuk says, V'hu Omeid Bein Hadassim. It says he will stand among the Hadassim. It means to say that the Shechina will stand among the righteous. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says Hadassah Shema. Her name was Hadassah. V'lama nikra Shema Esther. Why is she called Esther? Al Shem Shehaisa Misteres Devoretz. Because she hid her words. She kept things secret. Shenemar, like the Pasuk says, Ein Esther Mageres Esama V'gomer. She didn't tell what nation she was from. Rabbi Nechemya Omer, Rabbi Nechemya says Hadassah Shema, her real name was Hadassah. V'lama nikres Esther, why is she called Esther? Shayu umos ha'olam koronosa al shum estaher. Because the nations of the world, they used to call her they used to call her like she was a moon, like she was as beautiful like the moon. Ben Azai Omer, Ben Azai says Esther lo arucha v'lo ketzara. Esther was not too tall, she wasn't too short. Haisa, she wasn't too tall or short. Elabeinon is Hadassah, she was medium like a Hadassah, and so that's the reference. That's why she's called Hadassah. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha says, Esther Yirakurokas Haisa. Esther was green, like a Hadassah, like a myrtle. V'chud shel chesed mashach aleh, but she had a string of kindness upon her. That's why she looked beautiful in the eyes of the people and in the eyes of Achashverosh. And we should note over here that although Rashi does say Esther is a reference to the moon, and again a reference to Esther's beauty, others say that Esther actually refers to the planet Venus, the same idea. They used to call her by that term because she was beautiful. The Gemara continues darshaning the psukim from the Megillah, Ki ein lo avoim. It says again in the pasuk that Esther did not have a father or a mother. So why does it have to say her father and her mother died? It seems obvious. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Acha says, Ivrsa Mesavia, when the mother became pregnant, that's when her father died. And Yoldasa, when she was born, Mesa Ima, that's when her mother died. In other words, the idea is there was no moment where she had any parent. And then the pasuk says, Uvamosavia v'imol lekacha Mordechai lo lebas. When her father and mother died, so Mordechai took her as a daughter. So the Gemara says, Tana Mishum Rabbi Meir was taught in the name of Rabbi Meir, Al Tikrei Labas, don't read it as a daughter. Ela Labayis, read it as a home, meaning he married Esther. V'cheinu Omer, and that's also what it says in the pasuk. Ul Rosh Ein Kol, the pasuk says to the poor man, there is nothing. Ki im kivso achas ketana, except for one small sheep. Asher kona v'yichya v'vategad alimo v'im bonav yachtav mipito tochel mikoso tishta. He raised this among, like as if it was one of his children, and gave the animal from his bread and from his drink. Uvecheko tishkav, and she laid in his bosom. V'atihi lo kibas, and she was to him like a daughter. Now, the context of the pasuk over there is a mashal is being given to adultery, but in any case, the Gemara says mishum devecheko tishkav havis lo labas. The whole thing doesn't make sense. She's laying in his bosom, and therefore that's like a daughter. That's not a daughter. Ela labayis, obviously it means to say labayis. It means to say it was like a wife, like a house. So hachanami labayis, that's actually the reference over here as well. When it talks about Esther being labas, it really means labayis. It really means she married Mordechai. The Gemara continues, the pasuk says, V'yesh sheva ha'ne'oros v'gomer. It says that Esther had 7 maids that served her. Amar Rava says, Shahaisa mona behen yemei Shabbos. She actually used them to count the days of the week, so she would know when Shabbos was. Pasuk then says, V'yeshaneh v'yesna roseh v'gomer. It says that they were treated differently in some manner. Amar Rav says, Shehechila Maichel Yehudi. The idea was they were given kosher food. They were treated differently than everybody else. So Shmuel Amar and Shmuel says, Shehechila Kedoli de Chazire. Actually, the opposite. They gave them the hinds of the pig, thinking this was a delicacy. But obviously, again, it was a problem because Esther could not eat it as it wasn't kosher. Rav Yochanan says, Zeronim. No, they were given like vegetables, things that are planted. And so it was kosher. V'cheinu Omer, the pasuk says similarly by Daniel, Vayha meltzer nosei as pas begam v'nosei lehem zeronim. The same idea, they gave them vegetables in order to accommodate, so there would be no problem of kashrus. The Gemara continues that the pasuk says, Shisha Chodashim b'Shemen Hamor. They put the girls for 6 months. They gave them this oil on their bodies called the Shemen Hamor. My Shemen Hamor. What is this Shemen Hamor? Rabbi Chia bar Abba Omar. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says stochas. It refers to a kind of oil called stochas. Rav Huna Omar Shemen Zayis Shalohevi Shlish. Rav Huna says it refers to Shemen Zayis. That's oil from an olive that hasn't grown a third of its growth. Tanya, we learned in a brayso. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says, An Pekinon Shemen Zayis Shalohevi Shlish. An Pekinon refers to Shemen Zayis, oil from olives that have not grown a third of their growth. Veloma Sachin also, why is that put onto the body? Why is it rubbed on the body? Shemesher Sasaro Ma'adan Sabasar, because it removes the hair and it makes the skin smooth. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, Bo erev hi bo v'aboker hi shav. In the evening she would come, and in the morning she would return. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Migenuso shaloso rasha lamanu shivcho. From what we see as something that's a criticism of this wicked man, talking about Achashverosh, we also see a praise of his. Shalohaya meshamish mitasu b'yom. What the pasuk is saying is, he didn't have relations during the daytime. He only had relations during the nighttime. That's why it was bo erev hi ba uvaboker hi shava. She would come in the evenings, and she would return in the mornings. And the pasuk says, Vati Esther no seschen. Esther found favor in everybody's eyes. Amar Rebbe Elazar says, Melamed shel kol echad ve'echad nidmesolo kuma. So that means to say that every person, she would appear to him like she came from his nation. That's how she found favor in everybody's eyes. And the pasuk says, Vatilokach Esther el hamelech Achashverosh el beis malchuso v'chodesh v'asiri hu chodesh Teves. It says she was taken to the king Achashverosh in the month of Teves. That's the winter months. So Yerach Shenena Guf Min Aguf, that happens to be the month where a person gets pleasure, gets benefit when one body goes next to another body. So that was advantageous that he was able to benefit, so to speak, from Esther, and she found favor in his eyes. And the pasuk says, Vayav Hamelech es Esther mikol hanoshim v'atisochein v'chesed lefonav mikol habesulos. It says he loved her more than all the women, and she found favor in his eyes more than all the besulos, more than all the virgins. Amar Rav says, Bikesh litom tam besula toam, tam beula tam. When it came to Esther, if he wanted that it would taste, so to speak, like a besula, it would taste like that. If he wanted to be like a beula, like a woman who's already had relations, that's how he would experience it as well. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, Vayas hamelech mishta gadol. It says that the king made a great feast. What does it mean? Ovid mishti avalo galil. It means he made a great feast in her honor, and she did not reveal what nation she was from. Dali karga, he lowered the taxes in her honor. Velo galile, she didn't reveal what nation she was from. Shadar pardishne, he sent out gifts to the ministers in her honor. Velo galile, still she did not reveal what nation she was from. The Gemara continues quoting the pasuk, Uvehikavetz besulos shenis v'gomer. It says that when they were gathered, when the besulos were gathered for a second time. So the Gemara explains, Azel shakal eitzam Mordechai. At this point, Achashverosh took advice from Mordechai. Amar, he said, Einisha miskana la b'yerech haverta. Mordechai said, a woman is only becomes jealous by the thigh of her friend. Meaning, you take another woman, then she'll be jealous, maybe then she'll reveal her identity. Nevertheless, she did not reveal it to him. Like the pasuk says, Ein Esther magedes molarata v'gomer, she would not tell where she was born. Amar Rebbe Elazar says, Mai dichsiv, what does the pasuk mean when it says? We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis.